Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another fun-filled week of the Hogstye podcast. We've got a special guest on today. It's going to be Manny Benton, who spent 7 years covering the NFL for Scout.com before transitioning into a new career path where he's he's a Christian musician now and entering into the ministry, which that's quite a transition there, Manny. We're excited to have you on. Of course, I got Steve and Jamal with me as well. But how are you doing? And thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
We're great. I mean, you know, there's actual NFL news, which helps us with this show. You know, those that month or so where there's nothing going on, you probably remember, it gets brutal to try and find stuff to talk about and write about.
And
yeah,
thankfully,
absolutely.
this is the weekend for the combine, so at least it's some small talk going on, worth discussing.
Right. Yeah. And we're excited to have you on. You know, the combine's about half over. We've seen all the offensive players at the point that we're recording. This is Saturday morning. Bit of a transition as a fan where they're putting all this stuff in primetime now. And, man, I got to ask you, Manny, you went to Indianapolis when you were covering for Scout, right, a couple times? Or did you always do it remotely?
I always did it remotely.
Oh, you
Ben
did?
Standig always went. Yeah, Ben always went.
Oh, it was Ben who always went. What do you think? Did you prefer how it used to be when it would all be in the middle of the day, or do you like this primetime thing? I just want to get your thoughts on that real quick. It's not one of my real questions, but why not?
Yeah, I actually do not like the way they're doing it this year at all. I prefer it during the day like they did, you know, previously, and having those weekends where you get up in the morning, Saturday morning, you have your field position players starting to work out and stuff. I like it more in that format because it was easier for me personally to follow. Although with it being in prime time, you would think it would be more, you know, enticing for people to watch. And I'm pretty sure the numbers are good, but I prefer the old format.
Well, let's get into the details of it. And right up at the top, we hear various opinions about how much the combine really means in terms of the drills and whatnot. Certainly the interviews mean a lot. But what do you think the average fan can really get out of the combine, and what do teams really get out of the combine? Is it just all a show thing, or do the drills actually mean something?
I think it's exciting for fans to kind of see the players, to see their face, to see how athletic they are. But I think for the teams, they use the combine more so for interviews and then for cross-checking, because I try to put it this way. If you like the guy before you got to the combine and that player does great at the combine, then that's like a check mark for you. But if that guy doesn't do well, it just forces you to go back and recheck. But you always kind of keep your original opinion on a player because you want to base it mostly off film. And you have those guys that sometimes they go to the combine and they don't perform well. But that doesn't always equate to that player not having a good career. So it's a weird thing. But I think for the teams mostly they just want to meet the player. They want to cross check and just get comfortable with you know, the character and really just the interviews and all that.
Let's start on offense. Has anybody really stood out to you this week that you've seen or heard about?
Yeah, for me, it was one guy that some people on Twitter kind of got me to look at. It's Claiborne, the receiver / tight end from Notre Dame. He really stood out, and at the combine, I think he ran really fast and ran like a sub 4.5, and for his size, that was like really good.
Yeah, he was like 6'5" or something, like 230, and that's the guy that they were trying to convince to convert to tight end, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And he kind of reminds me. I was a big fan of Devin Funchess when he came out into the draft. I was a fan of him because he was such a young receiver. I think he came into the league at like 20 years old. He was a big guy. And you guys remember Kelvin Benjamin. To me, he was a lot more fluid than Kelvin Benjamin. So I look at Claiborne And I see a guy who is more polished than Funchess, who probably has better hands than Funchess, and I think he moves better than Funchess. So I feel like his upside is higher, but that's who I kind of am comparing him to right now. And I don't know if you guys remember, but Funchess too was one of those guys who people thought that he could be a tight end.
Right.
He didn't want to be a tight end. I don't know if Claiborne wants to even be that or not, but to me, Claiborne has an opportunity to be an outstanding player who can play inside outside with big size. I think he can be a great guy.
Do you think wide receiver is a weird position for me this year for the Redskins because there's so many needs that this team has. There's so many holes to fill. They actually have a good core of young guys, and so I really sort of wonder if the Redskins are going to I hate to say waste, if the Redskins are going to spend a high draft pick on a receiver, a guy like Claiborne, when there's so many other things. So what do you think, generally speaking, are the Redskins' draft priorities this year? What should they be?
Yeah, to me, as far as receiver, and I know a lot of people, obviously, tight end is a glaring need. Right. And yes, that's something that the Panthers use a lot. But to me, skill position in general, you have to get faster. You need to get more explosive on offense. And to me, I don't care what position it comes at. You just need to get some playmakers. And I know a lot of people just pigeonholing it with just the tight end. But to me, if you get another receiver that's explosive opposite of Terry McLaurin, you can put in a mid-tier tight end, and that tight end has a little bit of success because the attention is not going to be on him. It's going to be on the outside, the perimeter. So to me, it really doesn't matter where you select a guy. I just feel like you need to get more playmakers at the skill positions on offense.
Hey,
go ahead, Alex.
Oh no, you go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say, let me fit in because I kind of agree with Manny in a sense. Doesn't matter where they get them, and even still, when we look at just the playmakers in general, and we talked about this, I think, to a degree last week. The fact that or 2 weeks ago, whenever what's his name was on, Mark Bullock, just the fact that you do need the playmakers, it doesn't matter where you get them as long as you understand that there's a need. If you get them late in the draft or early in the draft, or whether you find them in free agency, you just have to understand that you cannot go into and I think this is the biggest mistake from Redskins fans in general. You cannot go into next year thinking you'll be just fine with McLaurin, Sims, and Harmon. And that's just one of the things that people make mistakes because you fall in love with these rookie guys. And yes, they'll continue to develop, but you understand that they need some help too. And getting them some help does not mean that their production will diminish. It just means that that you understand that you have to add tools to the toolbox. And this is just one of these things that the Redskins at least need to recognize.
Yeah, absolutely. So running backs, since we're talking playmakers, we've identified Claiborne, the receiver from Notre Dame. There's some obvious names at running back. Obviously, DeAndre Swift. Right. The kid from LSU, help me, Jamal Hilaire.
Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
Yeah, Edwards-Hilaire. Thank you. Who's sticking out at running back? Who should fans pay attention to?
Yeah, for me, I do like Swift. I think he's a guy who has really good hands. He's quick, and he can kind of play. He can probably serve as like that Christian McCaffrey role. Don't sleep on the running back position. I do think that Ron Rivera puts value in that position, and you have an old guy in Adrian Peterson who has played very well, but he's not getting any younger. And then you have two young guys who just, we don't know what Love is right now. We don't know how his health is. But we know Geis has struggled to stay healthy. And so I would not be surprised if they take a running back higher than many think, or if they try to look at the free agent market for one. But I think that they will add another running back at some point.
Well, initially, you did say they need to get more explosive, and there's a lot of speed that we saw at running back and wide receiver this year. So, Steve and I were talking before the show. I think there were 7 guys who were sub 4.4, and then a bunch of guys who were even in that 4.4 range in terms of speed. So this is a good year for us to find somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me about Bryce Love. I mean, I know I'm deviating from the draft and combine, but Um, he's a bit of an enigma to me because I think he was really, when he was healthy, he was maybe the best running back in the country, and we just don't know what's going to become of him. And the other thing is, I think fans have a view of him as automatically being the Chris Thompson replacement. I think he may be more than that if he can play. So what did you think of Bryce Love then, and what's the future for him?
If Bryce Love is healthy, he is the best back on the team, like hands down. And Geis has proven a lot. I think Geis is a very good back, but Bryce Love is different, man. I'm telling you, if he is healthy, he will be the best back on the team because he's a guy who has speed, he has strength and power. He has everything that you want. I think he has better hands than Geis. I know Geis wants to kind of prove that he can play a little bit of receiver and, be moved around as a little chess piece. But to me, Bryce Love is a little more natural at that. So if he is healthy and if he's who he was prior to his injury, I can see him definitely outperforming Geis, and eventually, I believe that he can be an every down back. But in the meantime, yeah, he can serve as that Chris Thompson role. But to me, if he's healthy, he's the most talented back on the team.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just obviously a question of his knee. You know what? Let's get to the poll, Alex.
Oh yeah. Steve does a poll every week on our.
Yeah,
Twitter.
but I did a draft poll, and so I want your opinion on this. I think the Redskins fan base is a little bit divided on the number 2 pick, or it might just be just me and everybody else. That's also possible.
I think that's
more so than ever. They're pretty divided.
So what we're going to do here, I polled the audience. We'd like to get your thoughts on the poll, and then I'm going to read the results after that. So the poll question this week was, right now before free agency, what do you think the Redskins should do with the number 2 overall pick? Draft Chase Young no matter what, draft someone else at number 2, trade down no matter what, or trade down only for a huge offer. Your thoughts on number 2?
I would have to go with trade down if only for a huge offer. I love Chase Young. I think he is a star, a day one star. I think he's definitely going to have that Bosa-like impact. The only way I would move back is if somebody blows me away with a deal. And I've mentioned this a few times on Twitter. I know a lot of people talk about the Miami Dolphins and their bunch of first round picks and stuff. But to me, I look at the Chargers. If they so happen to fall in love with Tua, and they put an offer on the table that includes one of their playmakers, because if you look at their roster, man, there's some talent on that team that if they put one of those guys on the table, my ears would perk up. I'm talking if they put like a Keenan Allen on the table, if they put their safety on the table, I would consider that, but you would have to still put another first rounder on the table for me. It would have to be something. I would love to get a day one veteran starter who is fringe elite. And then it would have to be another first round pick for me to even consider it. Otherwise, to me, you got to take Chase.
I mean, I think the hard part about a poll like this is, what do you consider like a monster haul as draft picks? Like in my mind, it starts with 3 first round picks as a monster haul. Anything below that, it's it might be a fair trade, but it's nothing special. If it's, hey, we'll give you 1 and 2, I'm passing right off the bat.
Well, Alex, why don't you do your prediction here, as long as we're doing it? So, what your thoughts on the poll?
Well, my prediction would probably be, because I don't think anyone's going to offer us that monster offer, it's going to be Chase Young no matter what, is my guess. And I'm guessing the fans are probably going to be in Chase or the monster offer.
Jamal, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think Chase Young is going to be it regardless on both fronts. I think the fans chose Chase Young, and I will choose Chase Young.
Okay, so I was in the very bottom percentage in this, as you guys might suggest or have guessed. The fans voted 51% to draft Chase Young no matter what, meaning that no matter what draft haul is offered, draft Chase Young. Right. The second place was trade only for a huge offer, 44%, and then tied at 3% draft someone else at number 2, and where I would have voted is trade down no matter what, number 3. We're going to skip the comments today. We got a ton of comments. We'll skip them since we have a guest on here. But that is.
Get 4 out the way.
You want me to read a couple? All right, we'll read a couple.
Just give us 1 or 2 because, Steve, I'd like to also point out you're in 3%. That's how unpopular your opinion is.
I kind of like being in the 3%, though, frankly.
Well, it lets you know that you're not with the with the norms.
The pulse is here on your arm, and your finger is somewhere in the midsection.
Okay. Okay, I'll read a couple here then. CeeLo at Life and Death 79 says it has to be a huge offer. More than likely it'll be Tua. It'll be for Tua, but the same result. It also depends on how well they do in free agency. Some of you guys wrote paragraphs. It's too long for me to read. Washington Sports Gang writes, Chase Young, no matter what, address other needs in free agency and later rounds in the draft. There are more than one round in the draft. At Ryan Y'all Top Dog 630 says trade only for huge offer. It's the only correct answer. That's kind of a sample. Again, there's a ton. We'll skip them. I want to get back. We have an expert here though, so let's get back to this.
Yeah.
Here's my thought. Isaiah Simmons would be much more useful to the Redskins, and he would make more of an impact because we have such a glaring need, in my view, at middle linebacker. So, am I just nuts, or is this an option that the Redskins should legitimately look at?
I mean, you have to look at all options, and I think that's what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, when you have the second overall pick in the draft, you want a sure thing, and to me, you want a guy who you think is going to be a perennial All-Pro, a perennial Pro Bowler, and a potential Hall of Fame type talent. And to me, in my opinion, there's only one in this draft, and that's Chase Young. And so, to me, it would have to just be a big haul in order for me to even consider that.
One of these days, we're going to get somebody on here who agrees with me.
No, we won't, because they're 3% of the population, Steve. We're more likely to get a Mel Kiper type who says, take Tua no matter what, because, his hair gel is seeped into his brain stem.
One of the groups that impressed me from what I've seen in the combine was offensive linemen. They looked incredibly athletic. I mean, Tristan Wirfs, my God, ran a 4.86. That's crazy. Your thoughts, generally speaking, on O-line? Yeah, your thoughts, generally speaking, on the O-line group this year, and what obviously the Redskins could probably use a left tackle and a right tackle both. So thoughts?
Yeah. I think regardless of what happens with Trent, you have to look at that offensive tackle position. So it is. It seems to be a very deep offensive tackle class, and so I think you're going to have to consider taking one with whatever is your next pick if they end up getting a second round pick or that third round pick. I think you're going to have to consider taking one because you don't want to miss out. You don't see offensive tackle class just deep that often. The past several drafts to me, as far as offensive tackles, have been pretty mediocre. So I think you want to take advantage of the depth that is there. I would definitely take one higher, if possible.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Wirfs, Steve, and he had a great 40 time.
Reminds me
but
of
again, we're talking about a guy who's probably like Brandon Scherff. He's a right tackle or right guard, not so much.
Well, I don't know about that. Let's get the expert's opinion because he's way more athletic than anybody thought. And granted, he played right tackle at Iowa, but guy that athletic and can move like that, I think he could be a left tackle. Manny, am I wrong?
Yeah. Anytime you see a guy who shows that athleticism and has a little bit of length, you have to consider him at left tackle. I look at Brandon Scherff, and he was very athletic at the combine, but I think that his length kind of pigeonholed him as more so an interior guy. And so I look at Wirfs and I say that, I can see him potentially starting off at left tackle. If he fails, worst case scenario, he's an elite right tackle. So I don't think you can go wrong either way. And,
sure.
The Redskins are going to need a right tackle eventually. I don't think they're going to keep Morgan Moses for too many more years.
And, of course, if we're going to talk linemen, the one guy who our buddy Robbie Duncan way back when kind of turned me on to, and I've been kind of eyeballing ever since, is Betcon from Louisville, the 6'7", 300 and some odd, some crazy number, 365 I think is his weight. He's big guy and plays mean, but I looked at his numbers at least, and I didn't get wowed by anything he did in terms of the raw numbers.
Yeah, Robbie said he's good. I'm going to listen to Robbie. That's my guy.
Yeah,
I believe in his evaluations, but I looked at a little bit of Becton, and so and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, how when some guys that you like, they go to the combine and they just they don't perform that well. You have to go back to the film and see, okay, what was it that I'm missing, or was I really missing anything at all? And if you go back to the film and then you kind of leave with the same thoughts you had initially, you stick with that. So with Becton, I wouldn't get overly concerned with his combine performance, but it is something you have to go back and question your evaluation on, definitely.
Right. It's not like he had a bad performance. I saw there was some O-lineman who had only like 11 bench reps. He didn't do that,
Well,
but yeah.
I mean, the problem here is that if the 97% of you are right, God help you, and the 3% of us or trade down guys are wrong, we're not going to get Tristan Wirfs. And so it's going to be a guy like Becton who the Redskins are going to have to go grab, a mid-round guy. And so if Becton is the guy, great. Is there anybody else that stuck out to you in that O-line group that maybe is a Redskins possibility, realistic possibility?
Yeah, I haven't digged too deep into the offensive lineman yet. But Becton is a guy that I did look at because that Robbie mentioned him. He mentioned him to me a while back on Twitter. But like I said, the depth at offensive tackle in this draft is deep. And so I think that you should be able to get somebody, whether they get a second round pick eventually or in that third round. I think you should be able to find someone.
Yeah, it is a thin group when you get to the back of the draft, I think. Looks decent from the front end, though, right?
It does look decent from the front end. It looks really good, actually, from the front end. A lot better. Like I said, the past few years, I have not really liked the offensive linemen that have come out. And so I think that you have some good talent in this class from the kid from Alabama, Andrew Thomas. I really like. I think he can come in and be a day one starter for a team. And of course, Wirfs. I think there's at least the top 4 or 5 offensive tackles can come in and be starters at left tackle for you. I really like the top end of this draft for that.
Mm.
Well, speaking of, I guess the better way to say this is the people that they protect as the quarterback position. This week, I told Steve and Alex as we were preparing for the show, I was out of town this week, so I was completely out of the loop. But the one thing, of course, that was on everybody's mind, I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday, was the noise that Mel Kiper made and the discussions that Ron Rivera had with the media. And that was simply talking about the quarterback position. Dwayne Haskins, Tua, and then you got Burrow. We understand that. I'll let Alex take it from here, but I understand that Ron did acknowledge publicly that they will be meeting with Joe and they will be meeting with Tua at some point and be attending their workouts along with Chase Young. But mainly these quarterback guys. Alex, what else am I missing? Can you fill in the holes so we can talk about this Haskins stuff?
Well, I mean, in Rivera's interview, he said he saw good progress from Haskins. There was that, too, to balance it out a little bit. And he's not, saying they're going to move on or they're not going to move on. It seems like they're kind of just playing all options, keeping everything on the table here, which, if you're doing the gamesmanship thing, and Manny, maybe you can speak to this, that's the right thing to do, right? I mean, you can't just say, we're not looking at any of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to keep all options open, or at least pretend like you're keeping all options open, especially when you're picking in the top 3.
Right.
Because you want to make it seem like you're in the market for a quarterback in case somebody wants to move up.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as, the talking heads seem to be saying, the Redskins are now all in for Tua, like, to me it seems like there's a lot of smoke screens being played with here. The other thing I think that is interesting about the quarterback situation is now that people are even talking Tua going number 1 overall and Burrow dropping back. What do you think is going to happen there? Do you see them maybe making a switch at the number 1 pick?
But and most importantly, before that part, what is your overall opinion on Haskins as well?
That's
just
good.
I just
That's
want to
a good
get
question
that.
too. Yeah. Burrow to me, I think is definitely a lock for number 1. You always hear this draft chatter because there's so much time in between the combine and the draft, and there's nothing to talk about at times, and so people just throw things on the wall and see what sticks. But I think Burrow is going number 1. And so when it comes to the Redskins, to me, I like Dwayne Haskins. I wasn't huge on him coming out of the draft last year, mainly because I didn't watch a lot early on in the process because I always figured that he was going to be a top 10 pick and he wasn't even going to be an option for the Redskins. So I looked a lot more at like Drew Lock, who I love. And so late in the process, when I started hearing that he could drop a bit, I started looking at him. And my opinion changed a little bit. At the same time, looking at him, I knew that it was going to be a project, that it was going to take some time for him to truly develop. And to me, I felt like Drew Lock would be better as an early starter. But having seen Dwayne Haskins play and the little bit of amount of time that he has played with the Redskins, I have really liked what I've seen from him. I see a guy who's super confident. I see a guy who, although he has accuracy, he's shown some accuracy issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more so from a foot issue. So I think that he just needs to get like his lower body to match his upper body as far as when he's in the pocket and make sure his feet are in the right place. I think that will help out his accuracy some. But he can make all the throws. And I think that he has leader capabilities. We saw the video of him, kind of talking to his offensive linemen last year. And to me, I've never seen, it's been a while since I've seen a Redskins quarterback do something like that. And him being so young, looking a guy like Brandon Sheriff in his face. And although, we looked at that video and was like, okay, these guys aren't that receptive. Like, I don't care. At least he's doing it. And to me, like, I just see a guy who is, from everything I've heard, he's teachable. He's willing to learn. And yes, it's probably, taking some time for him to do it. You got to realize he hasn't played a lot of football as a starter. So I like Dwayne Haskins. And I think that Ron Rivera is interested in seeing how it all plays out with him. I think he will give Dwayne Haskins every opportunity to prove himself because why wouldn't you? I mean, he's a 15th overall pick. He has everything you want as far as a guy who can make all the throws. And he's not necessarily a runner per se where he's going to put himself in harm's way a lot. I think you have to give him an opportunity to prove himself. And if he doesn't do well, then okay, you should have a high pick for next year. And that's a pretty good quarterback draft also. But I think that Ron Rivera is going to give him every opportunity to really prove himself. So when I hear these reports that are coming out kind of like knocking his character or, calling him dyslexic, even when he's not, those type of reports are reckless, they're dangerous, they're unnecessary. Because this guy has done nothing as far as like getting in trouble off the field.
Right.
I know he had the incident with, the selfie old incident, but I mean, as far as the character and stuff, to me, he hasn't done anything that warrants all this bashing that he's received.
If your biggest problem is you took a picture with fans because you were happy, that's not a problem.
It's a ridiculous non-story.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's I think you made a very fair argument for Haskins there.
Yeah, for sure. So my question is, before, because I know we're pushing up on the time here. My question is, how do you think they should approach the quarterback position moving forward? And we asked that because we know there's a need for a quarterback. We just don't know the perfect or the right way to from a fan's perspective, we don't know if there's a right way to do it just yet. How do you see the right way to do it? Should they go after a veteran? Should they go after a younger guy? Whether it's in free agency like a Kyle Allen, or should they like go towards the draft route as well to keep developing young quarterbacks? One thing's for sure, and I actually never said it until today. Haskins has got nicked up a couple times. He's only missed time for the latest injury, and that was towards the end of the season, so It makes a lot of sense. But he's had a couple injuries. One, he was able to play the next week, and then the other one, I think it was simply him just staying out of the Cowboys game to avoid injury. But anyway, my question is, how do you think that they should approach the quarterback position this offseason?
Yeah, they have numerous options. So number one, they're going to have to add a quarterback. You have basically Alex Smith under contract other than Dwayne Haskins, and we don't even know if Smith is ever going to play football again. So they're going to have to add a quarterback, and normally you want 3 in camp anyway to have 3 arms. So to me, there's numerous routes that can go with this. Of course, the second overall pick, many people still think that could be in play, or you could go with like a Teddy Bridgewater in free agency. But if you do like a Teddy Bridgewater, I think that speaks a lot to, okay, we legitimately are not completely sold on Dwayne Haskins, so we're going to bring in a guy who could potentially start. My personal opinion, I think they go on the lower end. They go the safe route and just bring in a solid vet free agent vet who can come in and be a clear backup and not apply too much pressure on Dwayne Haskins. I know Ron Rivera was asked, I think by Ben Standig, about what kind of competition are you going to bring at that position. He was like, very competitive competition. And to me, I look back at some of the things that he said previous years with Cam Newton, and he said almost the same thing. I know they drafted some guys last year, but still, they did not ever really bring in that true competition for Cam Newton. Because a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of starters who are proven, the Tom Brady's of the world, the Aaron Rodgers, those type of guys, they don't like guys behind them who are in their way. So that's why you see teams like the Patriots, even when they drafted Garoppolo, they ended up moving him because they knew that Tom Brady still had years left, and Brady doesn't want that kind of attention going towards his backup. Because just the quarterback position is different than any position on the football team. It's a position that I feel like you have to have a lot more finesse with, because it's such an important position, and it's such a mental position also. You have to give Dwayne Haskins an opportunity to say, okay, you are the starter. You come into camp. I mean, you have a guy behind him who kind of pushes him a little bit, but don't make it this big to do, especially with the DC media, where it's like, okay, this guy's behind him. We have Bridgewater behind him, or we have Ryan Tannehill or Marcus Mariota, somebody behind him who could potentially push him to be a starter. Give him an opportunity to just really settle in and be that leader that you want him to be.
All right, Manny, wanted to thank you for your time. I know we went a little over, but thanks so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, we appreciate
thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for having me. Really had fun.
And best of luck with the new career path that you're on.
And let the people know where we can find your music. For all those who we know you got a large following, so let people know where they can hear your music and see what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find everything on MannyBenson.com, but also I have a song that I just released in October of last year that you can find on Spotify or any streaming service that you use. It's called Strength & Shield. Definitely check it out.
All right. Great.
Thanks
Manny,
very much.
Thank you again for your time. And you have a great weekend.
You do the same. Thank you, guys.
All right.
So, guys, that was Manny. I think he gave us a lot of good points, but I don't know about you. I still have more things I want to talk about with the Combine from what we've seen. I don't know if you guys have more of that you'd like to talk about as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I love the Combine.
Yeah.
I think he's right. And the reason why I asked him, how coaches view it is I kind of think it's more of a fan service almost than anything else. I mean, the drills, you can relate the drills to what they do on the field, but at the end of the day, the film is way more important. I always try to watch as much of it as I can. Someday maybe we'll go, send somebody to Indianapolis if we could ever get some money together. But
one of our frequent commenters said, "Hey, are you guys sending anybody?" And of course he asked us a day before the combine starts.
Well, it's like, are you going to help us pay for it?
Right? Yeah. No. I mean, I'm sure if one of us hits the lottery, we'll go next year.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But okay, so combine. Right. My whole problem with the Redskins draft, even putting aside the Chase Young stupidity, they really don't have that many picks. There's so many needs, and there's not a lot of picks that are at least potential starters. You have a first and a third. This is why I'm so hard up on.
You can always you can find someone in the fourth usually.
Yeah,
but still, that's only 3 picks.
It's like, Manny makes a good point. DeAndre Swift, that would make a heck of a running back group, right? But on the other hand, they need a tight end.
Running backs ready, yeah.
They need a tight end. They need linebackers. They need, any starting guard, and it's a serious problem. It's what the priorities are going to be are just a mystery.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because you're right, Steve, and both of you're both right. But here's one of the things you have to understand. Meaning, why is my mom doing that? You have to understand that when you're looking at a team with so many holes, however, like the talent that's already on the team, like from a coaching perspective, you understand that the talent on the team you can work with, and you can build and mold and develop into your own, your own style and how you like to play football. You have to pick and choose. Who are you going to just have to manage with? Like, who are going to be the stopgap players at what position? You have to understand that heading into free agency, and then when the draft comes, then you focus on, the cream of the crop. You have to focus on that. However, in free agency, it makes complete sense in why, out of all the years that we've heard the Redskins are going to be aggressive, this year makes the most sense because you have a new coaching staff. You have people all throughout or on the team that's basically new in terms of the staff, and front office is kind of restructured in a sense. You have to understand that you're going to bring in players in free agency in which they're going to fill in some immediate and major holes. That's where you're going to be looking at and see who they can bring in. So those are going to be names. And then the draft is going to be supplemental to free agency, obviously, but these are going to be where you have to worry about the positions that you prioritize.
Well, this year in particular, they don't have a choice. I'd like to say usually how you build a team is through the draft and you fill in holes in free agency as kind of a supplement. But this year, I mean, the Redskins don't have 22 starters on the roster right now. They don't even have close to that. They have a major
the 3 special teamers. That's it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have more than that, but yeah. So I think they really need to hit a home run in free agency.
They need to hit a couple home runs, frankly.
Yeah, but let's talk about Ron Rivera, because we sort of got into this a little bit. Ron Rivera had another round of very substantive comments this week down in Indianapolis. At the combine, he spoke and he said a lot of things. I'm not going to read you all these, but he highlighted. He said they're considering all options with the number 2 pick. That's not news. He did say some good things about Dwayne Haskins, as we said. He was asked about trading out of number 2. He said again, we'll explain all options. Mentioned Trent Williams, said things are a work in progress, quote unquote. News leaked after that Trent just wants a new huge contract, like massive, gigantic number of contract.
Trent's agent put out a $20 million number, which is comical. I mean,
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's
it's
insane.
Basically saying we're ready to go.
Right. Exactly.
And by the way, I mean, my latest Trent Williams rant, I mean, I'm willing to give him a contract extension to some extent. There's no way in God's green earth am I going to get close to $20 million. That's absurd.
No,
I think Trent Williams,
the best players.
No, I think Trent Williams is a liar. I think he has no character, no heart. I think the team did everything he asked for, absolutely everything he asked for. Fired the entire front office, fired the medical staff. He's shown them no respect whatsoever. So screw that guy. If he has to sit out a whole nother year, fine. But Ron Rivera's going to trade him. Ron isn't as vindictive as I am. He's going to trade him, get rid of him. I think if they can.
The thing that upsets me, Steve, as much as you ran about we need draft picks, if you had traded him last year, you would have gotten a first-round pick for him.
I still think they can trade him. They can still trade him for somebody.
First-rounder for him.
But regardless, we can get to that. So in terms of Ron, he praised Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Here's one really interesting point. Rivera talked about wanting Montez Sweat to play vertical, and what he means by that is rush the passer. That's what he means.
Right.
He's getting away from the Jay Gruden. Let's never rush. Let's always drop these guys back into coverage. Getting away from that. Talked about how he thinks Josh Norman can be replaced with the corners on the roster. I don't know.
Well,
that's a bit nuts.
That doesn't say a lot about Josh Norman.
So Kyle Smith also spoke. Didn't have a lot of substance to say, but just the fact that he spoke and he looked like he was in charge, and his name isn't Bruce Allen, is a great thing. So there
was an interesting little thing I saw that he said that I'd mention. Not so much about the Redskins, but somebody asked him about how he got his foot in the door because of his dad, and he was pretty candid with, my dad. His dad was like, "I got you in, but what you do with it is on you at this point." Which you don't. When it comes to nepotism, you don't really hear people wanting to talk about it that much.
Yeah. That's my first time hearing it. Like I said, I've been out of the loop this week, but I will say I completely agree with you, Alex. You don't really hear it like that. You don't hear people as honest in a sense, or they just don't never necessarily go down that lane. They'll phrase it in a way, yeah, my so and so just kept me around for all these years, and they were the ones who I hung around, and they just let me do certain things, X, Y, Z. But that's actually pretty interesting to hear that he accepted the fact that he got involved in a certain way, and that his father put the responsibility on him to continue working as hard to keep progressing as a coach.
Like, I don't think you would ever have heard Bruce Allen say, "Yep, my dad is the only reason I have a job."
No, but he should have.
Yes.
So I want to get to this Dwayne Haskins thing before we run out of time here, because
we got 10 minutes.
Somebody's really disrespected this man this week, and this dyslexia thing started.
I wouldn't say his name though. Please don't.
You don't want me to say? All right. So there was I'll respect you, Jamal. I won't say it, but it's a well-known radio host who's a basketball guy, and what he said was that somebody from the Redskins told him that they were so concerned about Dwayne Haskins' ability to learn the playbook that they thought he might be dyslexic, implying basically that he's dumb. That's what they're really saying. That's so disrespectful to him. This man, first of all, he's not dumb. He's very smart from a football perspective. And number two, this is a very young player. He's 21 years old, 22 years old. The team was in chaos last year. He came in the middle of the year. I mean, it's just crazy that anybody would imply that. And I just find it hard to believe that anybody inside the Redskins would have actually said that. So that radio host that said that Jamal doesn't want me to see the name of, I kind of think you're lying. To be perfectly honest.
I would boldly say he was probably lying. And I don't even think, Jay Gruden, or anyone who was on the staff last year would have, come out and said anything like that. Because, for all the hype people have about, Gruden hated Haskins, that bashing the guy would just not be their style. That old coaching staff that was here before, they weren't that kind of people.
Well, Gruden was that kind of guy, but Jay bashed RG3 live on.
Yeah, but RG3 sucked and was a bad person.
He learned from it. Whether Alex, what you just said is right or wrong, he learned from it. He never did it again. And that was his rookie head coaching campaign. Or rookie season. I do agree with both of you all, and I agree with Lord Jesus.
No,
I agree with Steve in a sense. All I'll say is I don't know what type of ism this is, but the piling on of Dwayne Haskins just gets tiring, and this is just another episode of that, and it just needs to come to an end.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was kind of glad that I saw Ron say some positive things about him, because it's like, what are you guys trying to do to this guy? Do you want to help him, build him up? or do you want to just bust his balls nonstop and break him down? I just don't understand it. I mean, he's done nothing to suggest that he's going to be anything but a developing young good quarterback at a minimum.
Right.
So let's stop bashing him, for God's sakes.
I mean, you had that, then you of course had the Mel Kiper nonsense, where
I don't even give Mel Kiper any credit for anything anymore.
I don't really either. But like this whole idea, oh no, the Redskins should take Tua if he's healthy. Look, Tua's going to be a good quarterback if he can stay healthy, but that's a big if. And he's also, I mean, I know people like to pretend it doesn't matter. He's small. He's only 6 feet tall. Like, we know you can work around it in the NFL, but it's still not ideal to have a quarterback.
Look, I mean, this is...
And also apparently throwing with his wrong hand his whole life.
This is Mel, I'm betting my career on Jimmy Clausen and will retire if he busts Kiper. Right. Who, by the way... Jimmy Clausen did bust, and you didn't retire, and you've totally ignored it. You didn't even bother to make a joke out of it. So I think Mel Kiper deserves no credit at all. I even put him below Todd McShay, and there's not too far down you can go from Todd McShay, in my opinion. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's just absolutely absurd. In terms of the Trent stuff, because Ron talked about Trent. I guess I said what I'm going to say. I don't mind them extending him. I think that's the idea of giving him some huge contract is stupid. But the problem is they really actually need this dude to come back. They can't afford to create another hole on this roster right now. They really can't. Yeah,
right. That's the root of the whole issue.
For any of you out there who
he's got him in a spot.
Yeah, and for any of you guys out there who think, oh, we're just going to sign Donald Penn and be fine. Donald Penn is about to be, I think, 38, I believe. 37 or 38 years old. He was ready to retire last year. He was okay, but that is in no way any kind of real solution. And if you're talking about rolling with an O-line that consists of Donald Penn, some unknown person at left guard, Chase Roullier-Good, Wes Martin, and Morgan Moses, that's the worst offensive line in the league.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
that's a horrible offensive line. You cannot roll like that. They have to bring Brandon Scherf back. They need to bring Trent back. They need to have some sort of stability. They can't afford to just rebuild the whole offensive line while they have a young quarterback who this year is very important to him. So right. I think they actually need to not give him $20 million, but they need to do something to make Trent happy, even though I do think Rivera's not going to screw around with him for much longer.
Yeah, the $20 million number is comical. And if that's what he wants, then and he won't take anything less, then you walk away. And
trade
you
him to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, see who you can fleece and get, a couple picks for him. And I mean, I don't know, like I was saying earlier, we know that last year there was talk of a first-round trade was offered by the Patriots for Trent Williams, which, it's a late first-round pick, but at least you're getting a first-round pick for it. And whatever we get, subtract that value from that first-round value, and that's the screw-up of Bruce Allen.
Oh, I mean, I think they could. I wouldn't have traded him last year either. I mean, I think they can get a second-round pick from him. But I think if they get rid of Trent, I think there's no choice but to use a first-round pick on an offensive tackle. I think you have to draft tackle. Forget...
Well,
Saint
there's
Young.
just no one who's worth that value too. That's when you trade back.
Look, I'm not hung up on what some draft guy thinks is the right precise order. I mean, we're not counting money here. If the guy's a top of the draft prospect and you need him, draft him. That's the way I look at it. If Tristan Wirfs or Andrew Thomas or somebody else is ranked in the top 10, top 5 is there, draft him.
None of them are ranked in the top 5.
Don't worry about it. Well, you say, but there are a lot of people think Andrew Thomas is. I mean, I think you got to do it.
There's also people who think he's a back of the first round guy.
I realize that. None of us are O-line experts. And nor do I think Todd McShay is an O-line expert. So, but we could rant about this all day long. What else do we want to hit? What big topics do we want to hit from the combine that we didn't already talk about with Manny Benton?
I mean, I was kind of looking over. I mean, obviously tight end's been a big need. I've been kind of eyeballing a couple guys in this draft class, particularly the two Bryant kids, Harrison and Hunter Bryant, one from Washington State, or not Washington State, University of Washington.
Yeah.
And the other one played at Florida Atlantic. Neither really wowed me in terms of what they did in the combine, but I was reading up on NFL.com their kind of evaluation of Harrison Bryant, who I think is supposed to be a late draft candidate because he's small school. They compare him to George Kittle though in their evaluation, which I'm like, so if that's your comp, why is he going in like the 5th round in most of these people?
Because he's not actually George Kittle. That's why.
No, I know, but we are talking about one of the few guys who played tight end this year and had 1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah. There's a bunch but again, the problem right now is you only have 1 third-round pick.
Right.
So what are you going to do with it? You're going to have no offensive tackle. Are you going to do what Manny suggested, draft a running back? I love Swift. I think he's a good running back, but you still need a tackle and you still need a tight end. I mean, there's just way too many things, and this team more than any other year, they have to hit a home run in free agency. Yeah. They really do. I'm not 100% wild about spending huge money on a guy like Austin Hooper, like we said last week, necessarily, but I mean, they need to do some major work this year in free agency. Otherwise, it's going to be a really, really tough year.
That's the most important thing for me. Free agency is going to be big for this team. It's nothing else besides making sure that majority of your needs are met in free agency, and it gives you that flexibility to do what you need to do in the draft. And you can trade and Trent can actually work out if you can have a successful free agency. And you can get some assets from behind him, maybe multiple. You may get lucky and get multiple draft picks. But yes, free agency is very big because you're in a situation that you need to rebuild or retool. That's right. The most appropriate word. You're in a situation where you need to retool, and this is that free agency is going to be really big for this team.
Well, it's funny. We talk about you need to hit a home run. In my mind, if you're overpaying for an average tight end, like we were talking about last week, that's not hitting the home run. The home run is finding, somebody who we can, plug in for a year or two this year at tight end because
Tyler Eifert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think both of you are right. Overpaying for a guy like Austin Hooper isn't hitting a home run. That's like hitting a long fly ball that's caught on the warning track.
Right.
And
maybe
Tyler
Eifert
scores
a run.
Maybe so.
Maybe.
And the more I think about it, like if you get Eifert, what's the difference between him and Jordan Reed in the sense if they both get hurt, you're getting Eifert. You're getting Eifert for a cheaper rate. Like you're still getting an injury prone guy, but he's at a cheaper rate. He's not costing you $10 million a year. Like
if he's still $4 million, okay.
Yeah, like okay, you're getting paid $4 or $5 million, and you're still getting hurt, but at the same time, when you're on the field, you're very effective. Like, come on, it's fine.
The other thing I wanted to mention real quick that Ron mentioned this week is he said that Ryan Kerrigan, something like Ryan Kerrigan, he has plans for Ryan Kerrigan. Words to that effect, implying that
he's in the plan.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Plans to trade his ass.
Well, see, and that's the thing. There's a lot of fans. Jamal wants to trade him. A lot of fans want to trade him or see him cut. I never thought that would happen. Rivera's implying that, Kerrigan has, a role on the team going forward, which is another reason to suggest that, they don't really need a defensive end at the top of the draft right now this year.
Well, it's interesting to me. Like I saw, and this was probably more just like sports talk nonsense of, what do you do with Kerrigan? And people were suggesting cutting him. And just from a team building standpoint, it makes no sense to just flat out cut a guy like that.
Well, I think about what would that do to the morale of the players? He's done everything right in terms of, being a good Redskin citizen. Mm-hmm. He's put up massive numbers by Redskin standards, and you're just going to cut him.
If they decided to trade him because they thought they could get some value for him, okay, I can make logical sense of that.
Yeah.
If they draft Chase Young and they're like, all right, we don't need you, trade him.
That's like more like Josh Norman underperformed. Everybody sees that. Mm-hmm. Jordan Reed can't stay on the field. Everybody sees that. But Ryan Kerrigan has had none of those problems.
Right. Even if you keep him and you let him walk next year.
Jamal's about to disagree with me about performance. I'm not saying he's been outstanding the past year. Okay, last year was a down year, but he's at a minimum a serviceable starter.
What I was going to say, the past 3 years, by the way, I don't really agree. I don't think he's played well. But I was going to say, to be fair to Kerrigan, completely fair. Like, 'cause I understand, like, people know where I'm at by this point. But to be honestly fair with Kerrigan, you can keep him on the team if he's in a reserve role and he comes in as a specialist, or he comes in as a like a, I would say 15 snaps per game type of defender now. Like you're passing the torch to the younger guys. Assuming you draft Chase Young, you have Chase Young and Montez Sweat on opposite ends, and you have Ryan Kerrigan coming in as a depth player. And think about this in a sense, when you have Ryan Kerrigan in the past, when you have Ryan Kerrigan and you have Preston Smith on the edge, who are your backups? And just not, that's a rhetorical question in the sense of this conversation, but like, think about this over the years. You think about who your backups are and you're wondering where the depth is. Like, all you're really focusing on is Ryan Kerrigan, because he was the guy who produced. At one point, Preston Smith wasn't really getting the sack numbers. He'll disappear at times. But now when you convert Ryan Kerrigan to your depth guy, you know who he is, and you're able to count on him at the very least to at least provide pressure. You don't know if he's going to get to the quarterback or not, but in a sense that at a reserve role, you know who he is, and you just work around filling out the depth, but you have the younger guys who's going to start and get majority of the snaps. It can still work. Just being fair to Kerrigan, it can still work.
I mean, don't forget about also Jordan Brailford. Don't sleep on this guy.
Yeah.
They basically redshirted him for roster reasons last year because he probably could have come back and played. I like this kid a lot, and I think he'll be a lot better at defensive end than he will as an outside linebacker. He's another guy who's probably more of a 4-3 defensive end. So I think Brailford can come on, and who knows how he's going to end up, but I think he has talent and he can be a player someday.
Well, we're gonna be talking a lot of defense next week because of how our recording schedule works. We'll have all the combine results for the defensive guys next week's show.
We're also going to try to make up a guest that had to miss.
Oh,
before.
Right.
So we may have another good guest.
And also, I think I'm actually out next week's show, right? Because I'm doing that thing for Rick Snyder.
That'll also improve the show.
Yes, that will.
That was hilarious.
So that should kind of wrap us up this week. Manny was great. I think Jamal was great. Steve was okay.
Oh,
actually,
man.
Steve sucked.
That hurts, dude.
I want to thank our listeners for listening. You know where to check us out on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on YouTube.
iTunes.
iTunes. Oh, iTunes is weird now because they're going away from having podcasts and stuff.
Check out Manny Bent at MannyBent.com.
Yeah, check out Manny's website. Check out what he's working on if that's your thing.
But do it anyway. Check it out, even if it's not your thing. Do us a favor. Check it out.
Yeah, sure. That helps us. And tweet at him. If you listen to it and you liked what he had to say, let him know you heard him on our show, because that's always good for us if you do things like that.
It's always just about us with you, Alex. It's not about just being nice to Manny Bent.
Well, look, we make things for the people. We appreciate it if we feel the love. That's all.
Right. And we hope you all feel the love out there as you sit down and watch more of the Combine.
Well, it's already over by the time that they hear this, Alex.
That's true. I hope you liked it. Just go look at the numbers. That's what I do.
Just give up while you're ahead.
Yeah, I'm not ahead. All right, everybody. Have a great week.
Cut. By the way, Alex, that there's no season to discontent this week. Did you hear Rick say that on the show?
Yeah, I did.
We're taking a 2-week vacation.
He's recording his book that I'm helping.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, he's doing a book on tape of his. That book about the angels or whatever he wrote.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it? Are you? So you're. What are you doing? Playing a part?
Yes.
So point is that this show needs to be posted on Monday. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.